So just how wild did our wild ferment get? Back on March 24th, 2020, we started up a wild ferment of a pomegranate mead. It was just pomegranate juice, orange blossom honey, chopped raisins, and those lime leaves. Now I remember we took them out pretty quick. We did get a fermentation started, and I believe it's still going. However, because it's been, 5 weeks here, 6, almost 7 weeks, because today is May 12th, I wanted to check it, see how it's doing, maybe give it a little taste, just say hi. So, I'm going to remove the lid, and this is the first time the lid's been removed. I have, however, shaken the bejesus out of this on several occasions. Now, when I say shake, I actually swirled it more than shook it.
Now, an interesting thing that occurred with this, that sometimes this doesn't occur as pronounced as it did as this one, as we got what is known as yeast rafts. And that's when the yeast collects at the surface and connects together. They have like little parties up there. And it looks like little rafts.
Looks like mold, too.
If you're not used to this phenomenon, it could freak you out and you may think it's mold. It's not. It's just the yeast doing their thing.
An easy way to know if it's yeast rafts or if it's mold, shake the bejesus out of it. I'm serious. Because here's the thing, if it's moldy, the batch is probably no good, right? But if it's moldy, it'll come right back. They'll float back to the surface and continue growing. If it's not mold and yeast instead, they'll go back into the brew and go about their day. So that's an important way to differentiate. That's what I did, because I was like, I am not 100% certain, and I don't really want to show a failure if we don't have to. So, let's find out.
Yeast rafts will also most often be white or a slight off-white on the yellow side color.
When you start seeing blues and greens, that's when it's time to toss it.
That's not yeast.
Okay, so this started at a 1.110, which I thought was a little bit high for a wild ferment. And it's right now at a 1.088, which is pretty high for an ending gravity. So I wasn't wrong. It's still going. And I see bubbles coming out of it. Wild ferments can take a long time. One of our moderators on the VIP group, Paul Allerton, just finished a 1-year fermentation of a wild yeast. So I'm not really all that concerned. I would like to take a tiny taste. I mean, I'm a little afraid because that's really sweet. But we'll take a little taste here. And I'm going to pour the rest in because all this was sanitized in
the red bucket of sanitization! I've been working on that, if you haven't noticed, and I'm trying not to reach the octave that only dogs can hear.
I hear it. Can we have the lid back?
Yes.
So otherwise, this looks very healthy. We have some raisins floating to the surface, which also will help with the yeast rafts having someplace to form. So don't get all paranoid. Most of the time, it's very difficult to ruin a batch. I mean, if you're careful about stuff, it's really difficult to ruin a batch. All the stuff that we've done, how many times have you seen it where it was ruined? I think we had like one video that we didn't show because it was just ruined. There was no point in really showing spoiled fruit.
And that was our
we
bad.
abused it. It was the middle of a busy season for our day jobs, which we aren't really doing much of lately. But it was a busy season for our day jobs, and we just didn't have a chance to get to it. And it was fresh fruit sitting on top of a conditioning brew for like 2.5 months. Yeah. It was really bad. I didn't shake it up. It was my fault.
Yeah.
Okay. And we learned from that. And we don't do that anymore. All right, this is cloudy. Cloudy as all heck, and I expect that. It's nowhere near done. If I think of it in terms of a regular fermentation, this stuff doesn't know it's supposed to make that much alcohol, so it doesn't try. So maybe this is day 3, day 4 of a typical fermentation versus week 7 of a typical fermentation, if you put it into perspective.
If you happen to have a fruit tree in your backyard and you haven't collected the fruit on a regular basis, you'll know after a rather extensive period of time, as long as no critters have gotten to it, you will smell the fermentation of the fruit. But it takes much longer because that's a wild process. It's just, oh, hey, here's some sugars and here's a dilution and I'm a yeast and I'm going to do my thing.
I have some bad news. It's very kaffir lime leaf.
Yeah.
But not on the flavor. Oh, that is really interesting. It's super sweet right now.
So
But the
I,
smell.
in my further investigation for science, because I love that stuff, yes, I am one of those type of people. I have learned that adding citric acid to a primary fermentation is not necessarily a good idea because what yeast does to citric acid is it tends to turn it into
Acetic acid.
acetic acid. And if you think of acetobacter, which is what makes vinegar, it's the acetic acid that gives vinegar that sour taste. So that's not really something you want in your brew. So if you want to add a citric acid note to a brew, it's always better to do it after primary fermentation is done so that the way the yeasts won't transfer the acid. I'm thinking the overpowering lime note that we're getting from this to me is very sour, and it might have been,
It comes across like a gingery, vinegary flavor.
which would be the acetic acid. So
This comes through in the smell a lot more than the taste on this particular one. The taste is really interesting. It's really fruity, like super pomegranate. I don't get a lot of the lime leaf on that. I think it actually melded well with the pomegranate.
but I am getting that funky
There's some
sour note, and I think it's
Oh, I don't get sour. I get maybe I get the punch of vinegar, but I don't taste vinegar.
right,
Which is the acetic acid.
right. And
It's acidic.
this is something to keep in mind if you've used a citric acid note in a primary fermentation. You may think it's sort of vinegary tasting.
Yep.
It
We've had a lot of people
It
saying
doesn't
that lately.
mean that you made vinegar. It means that you've made acetic acid.
Now, if you think that you've made vinegar, okay, with whatever you're working on, don't just dump it. A lot of people have been doing this lately, and like one guy, he dumped 6 gallons because he smelled a whiff of vinegar, and I was like, "How old is it?" 2 weeks. I'm like, "You didn't make vinegar in 2 weeks. It's almost not possible." Instead, here's the thing: one truth. You cannot turn it back if it's vinegar, which means there's no harm in letting it go. Let it do its thing and find out. But if you think you might actually be making acetic acid, which we've noticed that a few times now, and with a little bit more research, learning all the time, we're seeing that. I actually happen to really like that. She gets it as a sour note. I don't like sour beers and sour ciders. I don't taste it as a sour.
Sour, I think, is the closest word I have to
But I don't consider vinegar sour.
right, because
I like vinegar.
we're foodies. Surprise! And so
What are you talking about?
we tend to get like the obnoxiously expensive little tiny vials of really good balsamic vinegar because that stuff,
Okay,
if you've had,
we get one and it lasts us for 5 years.
it is the bet. Like, put it on ice cream. I'm serious. It is fabulous. So really good quality vinegar is not just sour. Okay, so
White distilled vinegar is sour.
yeah. So I'm just
But
using
even
that.
I don't mind that so much either.
I'm just using it as a describer because I don't want to say it tastes like vinegar because that's going to make our
It
viewers
does
think.
taste acidic, which adds a sharp note to it. So
Yeah.
that with the pomegranate juice
Yes.
it has this sharp, sweet thing going on. I like it. Also, I don't know if you've noticed, but it's already bubbling again.
Yeah.
I've watched bubbles coming out the side. This was nowhere near done, and that's okay. We just wanted to bring you guys a little update and show you what's going on.
So I'm thinking with the flavor profiles that are going on now, we're going to let it continue ferment, obviously. And then when it's finally done, I think I might want to add more pomegranate juice to it.
It's got a possibility.
Because I want to keep this flavor profile. I find this flavor profile interesting, but I want more of the fruitiness to counter the lime.
We'll have to see what happens because that lime might age out. Although with other brews that we did, we saw that it really didn't.
Yeah.
Although they're all about the same age right now because we did them all like the same day or the same week. So I'm sorry that you guys hear about this stupid kaffir lime all the time, but we haven't used it since.
We've learned from
We
our
actually,
mistake.
this one and one other brew, the hibiscus, we removed it like almost immediately. Just went, no, get out, go away. So I guess we'll just have to compost the kaffir lime tree as we cut it. Anyway.
So this shows you, with wild ferments, it's better to show some patience. And also with acid additions, you want to be careful what kinds you're doing and when in the fermentation stage you're adding them.
Now, something else I want to say about wild ferments. They're unpredictable. Now, this could go all the way down to dry, in a year or two, or it could stop any time. I mean, right now it's at 1088, so it's burned through 22 points. That's like 3 to 5% ABV. I'm sorry, my brain isn't working that fast today. So it's really, really low ABV. I wouldn't even consider it like in a beer or cider range yet. Although, once it got there, it might actually be kind of tasty. But it could stop anywhere between now and completely dry. Most wild yeasts don't go past 10 to 15%, just like most wine yeast. If the yeast is from the lime tree, it's probably lower. If it's from the honey, it's probably higher. But there's no way to really know until it gets there. And you can see it's bubbling actually pretty actively right now. So obviously something's happening. We just had that removed. That's why I'm saying, like, there's something going on. Oh, I wanted to show my swirling technique since we're here and since I can. All I do is I take the jar and I just do this. And I just keep a whirlpool action going, okay, until it reaches the bottom and you can see the lees pick up. Because that's what I really want to do, is just agitate the lees a bit, and you can see that airlock going nuts. That's all that CO2 coming out. Now, that's also a good thing to do at this stage, where it seems like it's not going very fast. Well, nobody likes to swim in their own poop, right? So we got to get some of that poop out of there. In this case, their poop is CO2. I'm being silly, but it's true. It's their waste product. They don't want it. Alcohol and CO2 are the things that they give off. It's their waste. The more inundated with it, I mean, that's why we have an alcohol tolerance. Well, they also have a CO2 tolerance. They just don't put that in the package so much. You don't want CO2 in there, so you want to degas as you can. Don't get crazy, though. I mean, people are pulling out pumps and all this kind of stuff to degas. Don't do that. Just give it a good shake, and you'll see it happen.
Now, you can see by his swirl method, he is circulating all the ingredients of the brew, but he really isn't bringing gas into the brew.
Nothing is being added. It's all being pushed out, as a matter of fact. It's expanding. It's pushing those gases out, and that is the correct way, okay? I even do this from day one. I never take those lids off. I do this for about the first week or two. Once we get close to taking a reading, I stop for like a week, 2 weeks, and let them sit and settle out so that we can take a reading and see if it's ready to rack. But that's it. This video is starting to get way too long. So we're going to say thank you for watching and have a great day.
Bye-bye.